I have a poem I want to share with you after the talk, so that will serve as our meditation. So welcome to week 4 of 6 weeks in which we are exploring the 12 powers of human. The 12 powers that Charles Fillmore identified in his book, The 12 Powers of Man, which he wrote in 1930. And the premise of the book is that we all, each one of us, have inherent abilities. And these abilities have different roles that they play in our life. And at times, some need to work a little bit harder, and other times they need to take a step back, and another part will take precedence, and so on. But the idea is that these 12 powers will work together, with each power playing its right and proper part for us to live a full and abundant life. And Fillmore identified locations in our body for each of these 12 powers. And later, a minister by the name of Joel Baer identified colors that would also be added to these locations. And I find them very helpful, both the locations of the body as well as the colors, to help to meditate into those places whenever I'm a little concerned, a little worried. Sometimes just as a daily thing, I will go through a month of doing all 12 powers. The powers, though, 12 is a lot to think about. I don't know about you, but I can't think of 12 anythings without messing stuff up. But I can remember 6 pairs. Somehow that's easier. And so I'll show you where the powers are and where they are in our body as I'm telling you what these 6 pairs are. First we have faith, which is the color of deep blue. It's the color of the sky just before the dawn breaks. Imagine that idea. And it is located in the middle of our brain, deep in our brain, between our 2 lobes. And I think of the color blue as being faith, being the sound of the songbird before the dawn breaks, which is from Tagore, the poet Tagore. So faith matches with strength. And strength is located in our backbone. And it is the part that is a mixture of holding us upright and allowing us to be flexible. And the picture that I have for the color is light green. And the picture I have is of a stalk, like a tree or a flower stem or a blade of grass that has both the ability to be flexible and the ability to be upright. Then we move in our body to the next 2 powers, which is release and new life. Release being the things that we want to let go of. And the color that is associated with it is like a russet red muddy color, the color of dirt. And life is represented by vibrant red, the color of oxygen-rich blood. And both are located in our abdomen, in the places where our body releases waste and brings forward new life. And then last week, we looked at the ability of our bodies, at our ability for order and enthusiasm, order and excitement. Order being in that belly button area, in our navel, that place where we want everything to work correctly. And if you think about it with babies who are in gestation, it is through that space that through an orderly process of creation, a child is created and born. So there's order. The color I think of is the color olive green. And that is the color that has been assigned. And what I think of is filing cabinets, which are, those horribly drab olive green color. I see Cindy doing this because she's, an accountant and bookkeeper and lives in that color, at least part of her life, her professional life. But olive green, the color of keeping things organized. And that is paired with our medulla oblongata, which is a long and painful way of saying the back of our neck. And it is the color orange. And in orange, we think of excitement and juiciness and zest. And for me, I remember the neck because it's like, ooh, that's exciting, that's exciting, that's exciting. And I feel like a turkey as I'm moving around. So those are the three that we've covered so far. Today, we're going to talk about wisdom and love. And then in the next couple of weeks, we'll speak about power and imagination and understanding and will. And we'll go into those in a little bit more detail next week. But that's sort of where we are now. And so today, we discuss what I think is perhaps out of all of the powers, the most challenging and the most interesting for us to understand. And that is the role of wisdom and how it plays into how we love. Wisdom is located in the pit of your stomach, in your solar plexus area. I think of it as being in the pit of your stomach, your gut. And wisdom is essentially the idea of being able to practically apply what you know, to follow your intuition, and to apply discernment, make intelligent judgments. The color of wisdom is sun yellow. It's like a light bulb goes off in your gut. That's what wisdom might look like and feel like, but that's how I remember it. Related to that is love. And love is represented by the color pink and located in the heart area, just behind the heart. And there are actual nerve centers that work between the two, so that when you're in love, for example, you may not want to eat, or when you're feeling sad, you may not want to eat. They're all kind of together. There's a relationship between our gut and our heart. There's a relationship between wisdom and love. So let's talk about wisdom first. I mentioned that it's defined as the ability to practically apply what we know. Well, that one's kind of easy in some ways. It's raining out, therefore you put on a raincoat. In this way, we use wisdom all the time. We always, often during the day, are applying our ability to make discerning choices. Am I going to brush my teeth today? Am I going to get out of bed and put pajamas off? Notice I said that wrong. We make choices every day. And these are a result of our wisdom. So that's one aspect of wisdom, is applying what we know, practically applying what we already know. The one that I think is more interesting and harder for us to wrap our heads around is the ability to follow our intuition. Intuition is like our aha or our uh-oh power. And an example of this was just recently announced when the U.S. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, her husband was attacked in their home. And listening to the police chief from San Francisco as he spoke about the response from the 911 call, he said the dispatcher listened beneath the words and knew there was something else going on. It was a result of her experience and her gut. And that's a part of wisdom that I think that we underestimate. That at some level we know when something isn't quite working. And then our heads get in the way and say, well, no, these are the words they said. And our gut is saying, yeah, but this is the feeling that was just generated. And so we have a tendency to underplay the wisdom of our intuition. And when we do, sometimes, like in the case of Mr. Pelosi, it may have saved his life. It is a knowing that goes beyond the facts. And then the other aspect of wisdom is the ability to apply discernment. That is, to consider things that are presented perhaps as equal facts, and then to question whether or not they really are. And we see this a lot in politics, of course. We see it also, though, in the things that we are bombarded with every day, like television commercials, where we used to, you see a car driving down in the middle of nowhere, and it's selling the idea of freedom and expansiveness, and you don't see that much of the car, you see all the landscape. And so wisdom would be to recognize, what are they selling? Is it the feeling or the product? And to consider what is right for us in that moment. So wisdom is not necessarily knowledge. It is applying knowledge. And the best example of wisdom, or the most common example of wisdom that we hear about, is found in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Scriptures, where Solomon, King Solomon, is holding court one day, and two women come to him because there's one baby and each claims that baby to be their own. And Solomon says, great, no problem. Break that baby in two, and you each get a half. And one woman collapsed and was distraught at the idea. And Solomon knew that that woman was the mother. She would give the child up rather than have that happen. So, Solomon, Sol, sun, yellow, the color of wisdom. Interesting how that all kind of comes together. Sometimes our ability to apply this power of wisdom can be overextended, shall we say. And what that looks like is, my way is the right and only way. My religion is the right and only way. My political view is the right and only way. My education, the school I went to, the way of parenting, whatever it might be, is the right and only way. And then, of course, the corollary of that, the the logical extension of that is, therefore, yours is wrong. And so sometimes we can become overly judgmental, overly critical. And as a result, we may have a tendency to coerce people into doing things our way if they want to remain in relationship with us. So that's overextending our power of judgment, also known as our power of wisdom. Underdeveloped wisdom can represent as an inability to make a decision. And I am very, very comfortable with putting my hand up and being one of those. Because there are always so many great options. And wisdom sometimes is just making a choice rather than being stuck in analysis paralysis, which I often do, and which Walt laughs at because I often do. Sometimes underdeveloped wisdom comes across as a bit wishy-washy, having a hard time saying no and then sticking to it. And so, what is it that makes wisdom something that's so important? It's that if we have it, then we have the ability to remain calm in the midst of all of that chaos that might be out there. It's with wisdom that we can take a step back and question whether or not this is valid for me. What is true for me? And in so doing, we are more willing to risk listening to other people, more willing to risk holding another person and understanding another person without feeling threatened and without feeling like I need to shift my belief simply because they have a different one. Wisdom is knowing that we are all different and then standing in our own values, our own truth. And the reason we get stuck being overdeveloped or underdeveloped in wisdom is because it's part of our human nature. We've all been taught certain things that are part of our social conditioning. And sometimes they are things that can cost us dearly in terms of happiness and joy and a sense of freedom. I know that there are many girls out there who were raised believing that girls had to be gentle and nice and kind no matter what. And as a result, they probably put up with a lot of stuff. And I use the word stuff to include anything your imagination can imagine in the interest of following that guidance. I'm not supposed to do this. I'm not supposed to leave this man even though they're beating me up. I'm not supposed to insert anything you want in there. You know what I mean? Am I making that point clearly enough without making everyone go straight onto a downer, which I don't want to do? And at the same time, we've got men out there who've been taught that it's not okay to show emotion, that strength includes sometimes being really mean. And the question with all of that becomes, how's it working? How's it working for you? And if the answer is it isn't, then your gut is your answer, has your answer. Your gut is where the real wisdom within you will say, you got to stay, leave, adjust, whatever it might be. Get counseling. Go into an addictions program. We may have been told that Father knows best, even as Father is bringing out his belt. And Father is saying, see what you're making me do. This hurts me more than you. And you as a child know that's not true. You as a child are like, actually, that's not true. So all of that is involved in wisdom, and it's complicated. Because it's complicated by our love for the people who are sometimes the ones who are pushing us into these situations where we're so confused. Love can complicate our sense of wisdom. So how do we gain wisdom? The first question we want to ask ourselves is, what do I know? Take a breath. What do I know? What has worked for me in the past? Where is this likely to go? Am I getting all the information I need? When you do this, you can identify common patterns of overreaction that you've made. When this happens, I do this. When this happens, I do this. If I continue to allow this to happen and do this, nothing's going to change. If nothing changes, nothing changes. So what if when this happens, I do something different? That's wisdom. It's applying knowledge and choosing to do things differently. Am I being too forceful, insisting on my own way? Only you can answer that. Although your children or your grandchildren may also have an opinion. Practice saying no. Jesus said, let your no be no and your yes be yes. So when somebody says no to you, and then when you say no to someone, and they say, oh, come on, and about 15 times of them saying, come on, you finally just say, yes, okay. Then all that's really gone on is that you've taught them that with persistence, they're going to get the answer they want. Wisdom is staying true to whatever you want, what you want. And if there is no question that you can answer with wisdom, then let this be the question. Is this uplifting me? Because if it isn't uplifting you, then you are not uplifting the planet. You're part of an interconnected whole. And your job is to make sure that you remain uplifted, to uplift all. Solomon, when he became the king, said this, and now, O Lord my God, thou hast made thy servant king in place of David, my father. Although I am but a little child, I do not know how to go out or come in. Give thy servant, therefore, an understanding mind. That's your goal with wisdom, is to have an understanding mind. Then you can look at this situation and go, what does the situation need to heal, to uplift? And that brings us to love, which is the other most confusing thing. And I promise I won't spend as much time talking about love as I did about wisdom, because we speak about love often. But what we do want to know is that love is this emotion, and it is the ability to attract, and it is the ability to unify. So there's these three different parts of love, and the one that we're most familiar with is the emotion of love. The feeling of connection, the feeling of wanting to be in somebody else's presence. And it's amazing. And science has shown that love actually does do great things for your body. That when you are in love, I can't find my notes right now, but I read it and it's in here somewhere. But when you are in love and in that feeling of love, your body is literally more expansive. And that's awesome. And sometimes it's harder to think of love in other ways, such as the ability to attract, the ability to love whatever you're in at the moment, which is not necessarily that same feeling. The ability to bring agreement to a situation and harmony to a situation is also part of love. Let's look at overdeveloped love, which we see mainly with emotions, right? We see overdeveloped emotions of love when people fall in love so quickly. They love this person until they don't love that person. Then they love the next person until they don't love that person. That's an overdeveloped and somewhat underdeveloped use of the word love and the power of love. For me, the idea of an overbalanced love is when we love someone else so much that we end up forgetting to take care of ourselves. Where we give in and suppress our own desires in favor of someone else's desires, not because sometimes because we just want to make them happy, but also sometimes because we don't want to rock the boat. Choose the energy that we use when we are doing some of these and making some of these choices. But love cannot be all giving for another person without loving ourselves too. Overdeveloped love is the result, or is the origin of some really painful relationship, domestic abuse situations. You know, we see people who have been in relationship and then they end up breaking up. And then a person becomes so obsessed that they start stalking and doing some really awful things. And it's actually, again, this mismatch of love and confusion. We allow overdeveloped love to deceive ourselves, where we say we're loving our children, and then we're insisting that they do things our way. And then we say that we do it out of love when we poke our noses into their business, and not loving them and trusting that they are whole enough to make their own individual decisions, just like we wanted to do when we were the children and our parents were trying to do the same thing to us. Underdeveloped love. So that's all overdeveloped love. It's basically taking love and putting it in all the wrong places. And yes, there's a country song or two, and I can see Gisla's already got it in her head because she's nodding back there, looking for love in all the wrong places. Then we have underdeveloped love, which is that inability to be empathetic. The tendency to say, I need you to love me, and this is what it needs to look like. Or, I'm going to love you, but you need to do it my way. It's underdeveloped love when we have this tendency to disrupt and find fault. To think that someone is saying that they love us when what they're doing is merely flattery. And in the book called The 12 Power Meditations, the author says, he calls it vampire love. Someone flatters and praises you and puts you on a pedestal as if you're a hero or a heroine. Of course, what you don't realize is that this person lost nothing in placing you on the pedestal. It made him or her greater than you. For is not someone who is responsible for making a hero greater than a hero? I'm not sure if I agree with that, but it's an interesting thought. At any rate, you then, out of your royal position, are obliged to bestow whatever favor is asked on the one who made you a hero. And this relational love, this, if you do this, then I'll do this, this keeping score is absolutely a misuse of love. So, what is love then? Well, Carl Rogers called a version of love unconditional positive regard. And I really like that term. It's basically saying that I may not agree with what you are doing, but I'm not necessarily going to turn away from you as a person. I may say no to your behavior, but I will say yes to you. I will say no to something that you ask me to do, and I'm still wanting and willing to be in relationship with you. I'm still willing to consider something of a relationship with you. And even so, there may be times where it's you are doing these things and I am uncomfortable with them. I am going to not be in relationship with you. But unconditional positive regard means resolving to look at each person as whole and complete and intelligent, as what we say, you are the face of God, as equal. And when we can get to that place, then we're not going to be in a place where we insist on our way. We can say, okay, you have a different opinion than I do. That's okay. Let's go have tea. It doesn't mean that we have to shift everything. Unless there are times when you agree that it is time to shift everything. And that's why I think wisdom and love are so confusing. Because we are taught to love, love, love. I say it every week. All are welcome here. All are worthy here. Well, I don't know if I would be telling the truth if somebody came in here with a weapon. That would be an opportunity for me to match my wisdom with my love and hopefully find a way to engage in a conversation using unconditional positive regard. And so, wisdom and love. We can be swept away by emotions of love. We can love and be attracted to something that isn't good for us, which is a whole separate talk. We can be loving anger and resentment, and that also can be juicy in its own way. And wisdom says, wait. What's good for me here? What's good for the whole here? Am I free to be who I am? Are they free to be who they are? When we pair love with wisdom, we are free to be free. And that, my friends, is a beautiful goal. So I invite you to close your eyes with me if you want to. Keep them open if you want, as I read this poem that I discovered. It was shared with me by Martha Creek, or from Martha Creek. It's a poem by John Rodell. Hear these words. My brain and heart divorced a decade ago over who was to blame about how big of a mess I've become. Eventually, they couldn't be in the same room with each other. Now, my head and heart share custody of me. I stay with my brain during the week, and my heart gets me on weekends. They never speak to one another. Instead, they give me the same note to pass to each other every week. And the notes they send to one another always says the same thing. This is all your fault. On Sundays, my heart complains about how my head has let me down in the past. And on Wednesday, my head lists all of the times my heart has screwed things up for me in the future. They blame each other for the state of my life. There's been a lot of yelling and crying. So lately I've been spending a lot of time with my gut, who serves as my unofficial therapist. Most nights, I sneak out of the window in my rib cage and slide down my spine and collapse on my gut's plush leather chair that's always open for me. And I just sit, 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 until the sun comes up. Last evening, my gut asked me if I was having a hard time being caught between my heart and my head. I nodded. I said I didn't know if I could live with either of them anymore. My heart is always sad about something that happened yesterday, while my head is always worried about something that may happen tomorrow, I lamented. My gut squeezed my hand. I just can't live with my mistakes of the past or my anxiety about the future, I sighed. My gut smiled and said, in that case, you should go and stay with your lungs for a while. I was confused. The look on my face gave it away. If you are exhausted about your heart's obsession with the fixed past and your mind's focus on the uncertain future, your lungs are the perfect place for you. There is no yesterday in your lungs. There is no tomorrow there either. There is only now. There is only inhale. There is only exhale. There is only this moment. There is only breath. And in that breath you can rest while your heart and your head work their relationship out. This morning, while my brain was reading tea leaves and my heart was staring at old photographs, I packed a little bag and walked to the door of my lungs. Before I could even knock, she opened the door with a smile, and as a gust of air embraced me, she said, "What took you so long?" Wisdom and heart, wisdom and love are like that head and that heart. They are best met in the silence, where you allow space for them to work their relationship out. I bless you.